Hey, how you doing? Justin here. Today we're checking out All the Small Things by Blink-182. Really good song for getting into your power chords. I'm going to show you a kind of a simple beginnery kind of way to do it, and one that's a little bit more like the record. So the most easy version is just using G, F and C power chords, okay? So hopefully you're doing my beginner's course and you've learned your G, F and C power chords. But just to refresh your memory, if not, we're going to start with C. So to play a C power chord, you would put your first finger in the 3rd fret of the 5th string, and your 3rd finger in the 5th fret of the 4th string, and your little finger in the 5th fret of the 3rd string. And you would make sure that your first finger is muting the thinner strings and the tip of your first finger is muting the thicker string. So if you accidentally hit the thickest one, it should be dead, then 3rd fret, 5th fret, 5th fret, and the thinnest 2 strings should be dead as well. Okay, that's the C power chord. To get to a G, we move all of that shape up 1 string. Okay, so then we've got the 3rd fret, 5th fret, 5th fret, and the thinnest 3 strings should be muted as well. And to get to an F chord, we move all of that shape backwards 2 frets, and we end up with our F power chord. So to start off with, I'm going to take you through the verses and the choruses because they're a little bit simpler. There's a couple of kind of quirks about playing the intro that I want to go into a little bit more detail with and show you beginner and advanced versions. But the verses and the chorus is pretty much the same all the way through. Now, we're going to be using palm mute for most of the way through. So we're just going to be using that outside part of your hand, just resting lightly on all of the strings about an inch back from the bridge, but you have to find exactly the right spot. So a good idea is just putting your C power chord down here and start with it, you know, over the pickup or wherever you got. That's a bit dead. Slowly moving it back toward the bridge till you find that nice blend where it's, the chords are a little bit muted, palm muted, but you can still hear the notes. So that's important. And most of the way through the verses and the choruses, we're going to be doing 8 down strums to the bar. So it'll be simply 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and. Okay, make sure that the palm just sits in the one place and you're using your thumb and your first finger there to make that little motion. There shouldn't be a lot of movement with your whole arm when you're doing this kind of rock riffing. So the verse, very, very simple, starting off on a C chord for a bar. So C, all the G, small things F, true care G, truth brings C, I'll take G, 1 lift F, you're right G, best trip C, always G, I know F, you'll be G at my show C, watching G, waiting F, commiserating C, say it ain't so, I will not go, turn the lights off, carry me home. Okay, so if you got my songbook, you'll see that says C, G and F there, and the G and the F are in brackets because that's kind of the harmony that's inferred by the rest of the band or by the bass player. But on the guitar, you just play that one big C chord there and let it ring out there for 4 bars. And then we're into the chorus, which is going C, 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 G, 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 F, da, 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 C for 2 bars, da, 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 G for 1 bar, then F for 1 bar, then intro. Okay, so very, very simple. C, C, G, F, C, C, G, F for the na 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 bit. Okay, very, very easy, that part of the song. So let me just play through now that verse and the chorus, and I'll play that right the way through the whole section, and then we'll go through and look at the intro, which is the same as this little break, and some of the variations that you might want to check out with that. So starting at the beginning, 2, 3, 4, C, all the G, small things F, G, 2, 3, 4, C, 2, 3, 4, G, 2, 3, 4, F, 2, 3, 4, G, 2, 3, 4, C, 2, 3, 4, G, 2, 3, 4, F, 2, 3, 4, G, 2, 3, 4, C, 2, 3, 4, G, 2, 3. Here we go, this is the end of the verse, coming up to the C chord and hold, 3, 4, C, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, na 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 na, G, 2, F, 2, 3, 4, C, na 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 hence a little intro thing. Now, one thing I just want to mention, that a lot of beginners struggle moving the power chords fast enough to not have a gap in between. And what often happens, which is kind of okay, happens a lot of professional records as well, is that the very last strum, the and after 4, becomes these kind of open strings or a mute as you're transitioning between chords. So you'd have 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2. 2, 3, 4. Okay, just a little kind of click that happens in between the chord changes. Now that doesn't actually happen on this record. The chords are very, very tightly played, so it's moving exactly, a whole bar is played and then it jumps to the next bar. The band is definitely, obviously, tight, a professional band, but if you're a beginner and you struggle, don't be afraid to allow yourself that little transitional mute hit in between the chord changes, but make sure that you start the bar with the good chord and you're going to put that little click on the and after 4 of the chord changes. Okay, very big deal. So let's talk now about the intro. Now the very intro has these 2 chords that come on the and of 3 and 4. So, and it's a G chord to an F chord. Okay, so you'd have 1, 2, 3 and 4. That's the rhythm. It's hard to hear that when you hear the original because it just starts with da da da. But you know, if you're learning it, you need to know that that's where it's falling on the beat. So 1, 2, 3 and 4, C. Now the intro and the link parts are played quite aggressively without palm mute, so you're really going to be giving it some, and as soon as you start strumming hard, really, really important that you've got your muting good on your fretting hand, okay? That when you're playing the C chord, the tip of your finger is muting the thicker string, otherwise you're going to get all sorts of notes ringing out that you don't want ringing out. It's kind of a big deal. So the easy beginner version of the intro would be to do the G, F, then C, F, G, 2, 3, 4, 1, and 2, and 3, and 4, and. Okay, so we're just using the same C, F, and G chords. So C for a bar, 1, and 2, and 3, and 4, and F, 2, 3, 4, G, 2, 3, 4, 1, and 2, and 3, and 4, and. Okay, so the last bar, we play G on the beat, then we relax the chord and we play muted hits. So 1, and 2, and 3, and 4, and. And the and 4 and comes on the F chord. Okay, so let me play the intro real nice and slowly. So 2, 3, and 4, 1, and 2, and 3, and 4, and 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 2, and 3, and 4, and 1, and 2, and 3, and 4, and 1, and 2, and 3, and 4, and 1, and 2, and 3, and 4, and. Okay? Great intro there, you know, nice and simple, but there's a couple of little things that you can do to kind of spice it up a bit, which makes it sound more like the original recording. And the main change is that the first time you play the F chord, you use actually a different way of playing an F power chord. So if you play originally a C power chord and move your 3rd and 4th fingers down a string and then move your little finger up a fret. So we'd end up with nothing on the thicker string still, that's still muted by the tip of the 1st finger. And then we've got 3rd fret, 3rd fret, 5th fret, 6th fret. Okay? This is another way of playing an F power chord, okay? Officially it would be F/C because we've got a C bass note still, but that's the F that's used in that particular bar. So it's going C, F, then to G. But still this, that's still the low F. So it's really just this F chord in bar 2. So at speed, 1, 2, 3. Okay, now another variation that happens in the link, okay, so when it kind of sounds like the intro but later in the song, there's an overdub guitar. That means that they've recorded another guitar over the original guitar, and that's playing a thing called octave, so it's going okay, and that's really, really a strong thing that we hear when we hear the song. And a cool way of kind of incorporating it in if you're a bit more advanced is when you're on that fancy F chord, is to move little finger back a fret because it's going from an F to an E and then to a G full bar chord, so we end up with this. Here, F. Okay, and that's just from bringing little finger back a fret. I guess technically we could call it F major 7 over C if you want to give it a fancy name, but it's just the power chord with little finger, step back, and then go into the G chord. So that's a kind of a nice thing. If you're in a 2-guitar band, the other guitar would go using octaves, C, F, E, D. Okay, it's just a nice little kind of this overdubbing idea, very, very common in metal, where you have 1 or 2 or 3 guitar parts playing slightly different things that kind of come together to create something really big sounding. Particularly in rock, you want really big sounding guitars, so usually you do that by adding layers. Sometimes the same part, there's rumours of guys like Metallica sometimes what we call tracking, so putting down different layers, each track of guitar. There might be 20 or 30 tracks of guitar playing one part, and for me this recording sounds like it's got plenty of guitar tracks going on there to make it sound, because it really sounds quite big when you listen to it loud. It's a lot bigger than you'd ever get in a kind of a live sound. Anyway, I digress. The really important other part of that I kind of glossed over a little bit is those muted parts, okay? So when you've got that F chord or the fancy one, or you're doing the regular one, really make sure after you've done the G, okay, that you can keep the chord shape down, but that's what you've got to be careful of there. Now what that is harmonics being created, okay, by the fingers being lightly touching. Hopefully you're familiar with the idea of harmonics. With distortion on, they tend to come out a little easier, okay? So very often with those kind of things, I'll just relax all of the fingers, because if you've got 2 fingers muting the string, then you won't get a harmonic, okay? That's part of the trick with them, okay? So if you're going to do that, I'll often go G and then just spread all my fingers out nice and evenly over the thing, rather than trying to just hold the chord shape, just to make sure I get a mute. So it's kind of up to you. If you find that you can get a good mute by just relaxing the chord shape and leaving it down, that's fine. Otherwise, just spread those fingers out, make sure that you get a nice good mute, because it's really important that, really important. If you want it to sound like the song, it's really important, okay? So this is a really good beginner's one, you know, because you can keep it real simple, but as you progress on the guitar, you can start to add these fancier things in, the 4th string root power chord thing, the F with the C bass, you know, and then maybe playing the F major 7 if you want to get into replicating that melody, or playing the octaves if you're a kind of intermediate guitar player and looking at that. So these kind of songs are really good for that. Mostly though, you really want to be making sure that you've got a really nice tight power chord, so good palm muting, so the chords are nice and tight, you don't have extra strings ringing out, because that sort of stuff on a simple song like this, really, really important that the things are played really well, okay? You don't want it to be really sloppy, a simple song. Hard songs, a little bit more forgivable. Now, one thing that I often get asked about with these kind of songs is getting the sound, particularly for beginners not sure about the distortion thing. So you do need some kind of distortion. So a lot of amplifiers come with a built-in distortion or gain control, so you can try turning that up. A lot of it is mucking around with your own guitar and amplifier, because every different amp has a different kind of setting to sound the same. If I gave you the same ones that I'm using right now, they probably won't sound the same on your amplifier. But one thing that you probably do want to do for a kind of a rock song is to be using the back pickup, the one closest to the bridge, okay? So this big black one on my Stratocaster here, but you know, on any sort, you know, Gibson guitar or whatever, try and use the one closest to the bridge, because it'll have the kind of the crunchiest sound. You probably want to have your volume on your guitar right up as well, because that gives you the most gain, and you want to be adjusting the volume on the amplifier, not on your guitar. So just turn probably all of the knobs on your guitar up onto full. And then you probably want to have, if you've got a master volume, you want to turn your gain or your distortion all the way up, and then use your master volume to adjust the actual volume, okay? If you've got a distortion pedal, then again, you probably want for this sort of song the gain to be quite high, so between 7 and 10, depending on what sort of distortion pedal it is. And the one other thing that you might want to tweak a little bit is maybe boosting the bass a little bit, boosting the treble a little bit, and cutting the mids a little bit, okay? It's called a scooped mid, very common in this kind of a style. So that's a kind of a general guidelines. I will put the specific settings that I used for this song on the website because it's a bit easier there. I explain all the equipment I use there, so do go and check that out. But that should give you a kind of rough idea. I really hope you enjoyed this lesson. Please subscribe if you like what I do, and go and check out the hundreds of lessons I've got over for free on my website. And I'll see you for plenty more very soon. You take care of yourselves. Bye-bye.